Welcome. I'm Pamela Riccia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm here with the Beck family. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hey. So we were recently introduced by a mutual friend, and I'm so excited to learn more about your family's unschooling journey. I'm so happy that you all could come together in this moment. So I think that's extra special. So to get us started, I thought we'd do maybe just a short round the room intro. Who's who and what's everybody up to right now?
Absolutely. I'll go first. I'm Josh. Right now, life's been a little slower since the pandemic hit, but we're excited to get ready for springtime. We've got a garden in our backyard that we're working on expanding out this year, so we're planning that out right now. But just enjoying life right now.
Sweet. Next hand.
I can go next. I'm Rylie. I am hanging out in the mountains of Idaho right now. We moved out here in October, kind of, again, with similar to Josh, slowing down in the pandemic, realized that we had some extra time in our lives. And so we moved out here, and I'm currently teaching ballet at a local dance studio.
Sweet. Ellie?
Hi, I'm Ellie. I am currently surviving my senior year at KU and gearing up to start law school in about 3 months.
Sweet. That keeps you busy too. All right, Mom and Dad?
Hi, I'm Angie. I'm Mom, and we are obviously, they're all in different places. We are empty nesters now. I actually still work kind of in the education area. I tutor students with dyslexia, and I do it all online since I was doing it online before the pandemic, and obviously through the pandemic still staying online. That's keeping me busy.
Sounds good. I'll round us out. I'm Darren. I'm Dad. We're based here in the Kansas City area where the kids are born and raised. And I get the joy of working remotely for a company called Sustainable Brands. We work with companies teaching them how to essentially win through environmental and social innovation to make the world a better place and find a good way of differentiating themselves in the market too.
Well, that's awesome. That sounds awesome. I'm really interested to hear more about what everybody's up to, because I'm sure that's going to weave into our conversation. But to get us started, I would love to hear how you discovered unschooling and what your family's move to unschooling looked like back then. So I thought maybe we could start with Angie here. Figure you took the lead there.
Absolutely. So when Josh was born, there was a mom who was in a play group. Actually, we wound up in a play group together. We were first in a nursing mom support group at the hospital where our babies were born. And she already was talking with the 2-week-old baby, 3-week-old baby, that they knew they were going to homeschool. But they were going to homeschool for religious reasons, and I knew that we had no interest in that. And so, but it kind of planted that seed of, oh, people homeschool. Okay. So, because I didn't really know anybody that homeschooled growing up. I didn't have any kind of background with anybody that homeschooled. And so as the kids got older, Josh was a very busy little boy. And we just kind of started wondering, how this was going to play out. And he we just did the traditional path. He did 3-year-old preschool, loved it, had a great teacher, just played and had fun and made friends, and it was great. And then he started 4-year-old preschool, and I didn't realize that 4-year-old preschool geared children up to go to kindergarten. And we got a note one day from Josh's 4-year-old preschool teacher that he didn't want to do his seat work. And we kind of looked at each other and we were like, we don't see the problem in that. He's 4. And she's like, well, you do know that, he's learning how to be in kindergarten here, and he has to be able to sit down and do the work in kindergarten. And we had talked about, started kind of a conversation about homeschooling, maybe that's a good idea. Started to do some research, got a lot of books from the library. At that time, we weren't online, I don't think. I wasn't online, right? I don't think.
Maybe just a little bit.
And so just started really, really researching things. And then we, I think that spring had like the little parent-teacher meeting time with the preschool teacher. And, we were talking, she asked, kind of what our plans were. And I said, actually, we're going to homeschool him. And she's like, I think that's a really good idea. And I wasn't sure at that point if she was like, being supportive or being sarcastic or what was going on there. But I think she really did think it was a good idea. And
I'll just say, was sitting there, it was so interesting. Again, 4 years old, first parent teacher conference. And I'm just staring down this future, right, of how many more parent teacher conferences are we going to have. In this particular case, Josh is the furthest along, and I'm thinking, I want him to be a happy little camper, right? And am I going to have to go through this with Angie every time we sit down with a kindergarten teacher in first grade and second grade? And at a certain point, school in many ways is about conformity. And at what point in time, are they going to start, asking for medication to come into play and all the rest? And for us, I think what we both had realized that they've given us a sense, kind of a catalyst for thinking about whether homeschooling might be the path, is that Josh could very easily sit down and focus for hours at a time on the things he was interested in, right? So it's not that he couldn't focus. It's just like, well, is he interested in what you're asking him to do? And we thought, again, school is going to be a constant challenge in that way throughout, right? So are we going to try to force our kids into a system that's going to want to kind of just keep them honed in that way? Or might we, take advantage of some of the things we're already seeing as parents, right? Which is that intuitively, kids will focus in where their interests lie, right? And Angie dug into the research and started, checking out some local homeschooling groups. She started bringing books home on a regular basis. So I'll segue back to Angie.
So that January before he turned 5, so he would have started kindergarten that coming fall. He was still in preschool. I had found a local homeschooling group that was secular, and it was the only one in town. And it was just our people. It was our people. And so we joined that and started doing activities, but I was still not really unschooling yet. Because, I just hadn't made that leap. And so I got the 5 in a Row books and was like, oh, this would be great. These are great books, great activities, all these things. And we sat down the first day. And at that point, Rylie was 2.5 and I was pregnant with Ellie. And so we sit down and we do the first day. We read, I think it was Make Way for Ducklings, and we do the activity and we had a great, great time. And the next day, day 2, it's 5 in a row, right? Day 2. And we sit down and I get the book and Josh looks at me and goes, we read that book yesterday. And he hopped down off the couch and he went over and got his Legos and started playing Legos. And I was like, what do I do now? That's not how they said this was going to happen. And so I just kind of kept reading my books and going to the homeschooling meetings and met a lot of families at Unschooled. And I started seeing families with teenagers, like young teenagers, older teenagers. And they were really interesting people, could carry on conversations, really deep conversations. And it didn't seem to matter. I was noticing that when we were at events that the kids weren't age segregating themselves, they were interest segregating themselves. Right. So if there was a 6-year-old who was interested in something that a 14-year-old and maybe a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old were doing, those older kids didn't say you can't come hang out with us. They were like, come on, we'll show you what we're doing and let's teach you about this. And if you know how to play, then if it was like, a card game or whatever, then we'll hop on in. And that was just really like eye-opening for me, in that it just seemed really like that way how life should be. You shouldn't be, nowhere else do we spend time with just the people who are our same age. I mean, and so, so we just kind of followed a path. We had some people in our lives tell us, oh, I'm not sure you want to do this. And so I kind of read, and we kind of just gave the answer, oh, we're just going to try this for a year. We'll see. We'll just kind of, and every year it's like, well, it's still working, so we're just going to keep going. And then we just never stopped.
It's interesting. I'll build again. I feel like the first time I remember unschooling was when Angie had just finished the Unschooling Handbook, and she handed it to me and goes, I think we should try this. This seems to be kind of like, wow, this really seems to fit a lot of what we value as a family. And so I read it, and sure enough, I mean, I feel like we had been going through a process in our life anyways, just new parents. There's just so much new going on that we were opening up to being people who we were growing into, I guess, in some ways, right? We were kind of in a path of growth and how we look on the world and how we wanted to show up in the world. And it seemed to fit that nicely. And what we have always been is very, even before we had kids, very family centric. We had just, super loving parents who just, made so much possible for us, that family was kind of the core of our values and principles anyways. So I'm open to an uncharted path. It certainly was. It was an invitation to take life in a very free-flowing way. And where I placed my trust, and I think that's the important part when parents are first thinking about this, is I placed my trust in Angie, because again, she was really going to be helping to guide the kids through this. I knew that she was one of the most well-researched, thoughtful people I knew, and that she's not going to overlook something. And I also knew how much she valued her kids, our kids, right? I mean, that she wasn't going to lead them down a path that she felt like wasn't going to be fruitful in some way. And I think she's exactly right. We decided to give it a go and see where it went. And slowly but surely, it continued to go well. And the nice thing about the Learn, which is the homeschooling group we were part of, stands for Let Education Always Remain Natural, was so nice to be surrounded by people who, it was eclectic. And we had folks who were doing school at home. We had folks who were on the unschooling path, but you could see other families that were a few steps down the road. And again, as Angie mentioned, some with kids who'd entered into their 20s, and say, hey, it turned out all right. So just that validation, I think, was helpful in terms of having a support group around us as well.
Okay, so I have so many things that I thought were awesome about that. But I want to ask first, so Darren, you went to some of the Learn meetups?
I did. From the very first one, we made that a joint venture, and it was fascinating for me. I mean, it was my first introduction into mama power. There were guys and dads in the room too, but I would say 80% of the room were the homeschooling moms. And wow, just again to see not only the leadership in the room, but I started very quickly understanding this was. I'm going to get deep here. This is about systems change. It's about doing what's right for your family, but taking a risk, having the courage to step outside of the system and to change it for the people who are the most important in your life, right? It's kind of like there's nothing more valuable than giving them a great experience and allowing them to become the people that they are destined to be. And I think that really is kind of important to see so many moms prepared to kind of make that investment, so many families ready to make that investment in intuitively following who their kids were and building almost a custom curriculum, custom education around that for each and every one of the kiddos. And for me, it was amazing to see that this group was going to move mountains. You could just feel it in the room. You could feel the empowerment, the nurturing, the enablement that was going on. with so many of these folks. And I think what I was kind of smitten by too with the group is just it was a range of free spirits. You would be hard pressed to kind of pinpoint a certain belief that everyone shared collectively. That's okay. I mean, for me, I'm all about someone who believes in a path and believes in it enough that they're ready to kind of stand up for it and share it and talk about it. I really value that, right? And the people I kind of surround myself with. So that in particular resonated with me when I went to be a part of that group. And we go in, like, I think it was every Monday night. And in some ways it's sort of like, again, you're going to have your moments of like, did we choose the right path along the way? And Monday night kind of shored it up with a little bit of validation. And you could do some problem solving with other parents who were like, I woke up this morning, I thought, what about math, right? And kind of like, what about?
Oh, I love that. There's two pieces there, Darren, that really stood out. So first was giving that trust to Angie, because she had, started down this path and she was doing a whole bunch of research and found this group. And I think that is such a helpful piece, because it's not like, yesterday you're doing school at home and the next day you're unschooling and there you go. It's a journey. It takes a while to bring this into your family and to understand that depth, right? So to give that space to allow things to unfold for a while, to give that trust that I know you have our kids' best interest at heart. I know you're thinking hard about this. And that you're just trusting that they're bringing them their full selves to it, right? I think that is so valuable. And then alongside, you also had that open and curious attitude, which, like you were saying, you've had even before you had kids, that it's what works for us versus what is that traditional path. You're open and curious to see what else works, so that you also dove in and went to the group meetings, right? So that you were also learning alongside. And even if, like, for me, even if there aren't like groups locally that you can go to, there are now like online groups. I think finding community so that you have people that you can talk to is really valuable, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. I had a chance to grow, and shortly after that, I was working with Sprint, the wireless company before that, and part of my work was again sort of focused on corporate social responsibility, but we were in the communications group, and very early on, to support that work in the business side, we were going on Facebook and learning about Twitter. This is like 2007, 2008, trying to get into understand social media to leverage that for the company. But what I quickly found is not only was I sort of the green guy over at Sprint, but half my Twitter feed was the unschooling folks that I found around the country. So I very early kind of established, I would probably have curated about 800, kind of unschoolers across the country who kind of expanded beyond. Again, they were only a subset of our local secular group. But so I very quickly kind of found my niche, found my community as well, even virtually, and got us well beyond Kansas City. I want to go back to what you said a moment ago about trust, because I feel like that's so important. And I'm going to talk about it in terms of concentric circles, right? The very first part you need to have that trust is with your partner. I mean, I've seen single parents unschool and pull it off, but if you have a partner, it's that other person, giving the space to say, yeah, let's give it a try. But then beyond that, the next concentric circle out is your family. And so my mom, who I love dearly, is a lifetime educator, taught fifth grade for years. Most of the friends in our community we grew up with, teachers, principals. So they're coming from the educational system that they know and that they work within. What I love is that folks like my mom show up, and if you were ever blessed enough to have her as your teacher, you would have hit the lottery. I mean, she's the one who kind of brings all that love and the nurture into the system, but still bumps up to the constraints of the system. So I guess that next kind of circle out was sort of like, I didn't want the family to feel as if it was a judgment leveled against them in terms of what they have invested their lives in, right? Mm-hmm. And so our decision is not passing judgment on where they're spending their time or how we were raised. And then my father, who spent years in the social services side, oftentimes when he heard about homeschooling, in many cases, he was the guy who had to come in and kind of pull people out of bad situations, right? Where someone was using homeschooling as a cover for domestic abuse and neglect and so on. So he didn't have as wide an experience with homeschooling in the more positive sense we had seen too. So that next circle out, where if you can find the grace, if you can find the trust, is hopefully with your family. And that's almost, it seems like the entire unschooling journey was kind of navigating that. And then beyond that, the final circle are just the people you bump into every day, the people who see your bumper sticker in the grocery store parking lot, the folks who want to kind of quiz the kids as they come along, it's this interesting kind of, you hopefully find grace with your partner, then hopefully find grace with the family, and then hopefully find grace with the people around you in your community. But you won't always, because what we're doing is pioneering. This is something that's, we weren't the OGs back in the day. You can look even further back into the 60s and 70s for that, but very few of us were even doing it at that time. And what I'm pleasantly seeing is that we're getting some growth and seeing more and more adopt this, but it's still not the norm by any means.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of the circles and the grace and the trust that you can extend to those people, understanding where they're coming from, right? I too had educators, in my extended family. And you know what? Often it was because we aren't judgmental in our choice. This is just our choice. And I love the way you phrased it, Angie. It's like, we're going to try this for a year. Oh, this is still working. We're going to keep trying it. It's not like you guys are wrong, we're right, we're doing this forever. That's not the approach, right?
Right.
So I think that's wonderful, and especially at the beginning, but then it's just wonderful. And so often you keep it. But when you're first learning about unschooling, that's when I think the community is really helpful, because then you can steep in that ethos, really, in the families and the energy of people who are trying to live the way you're wanting to live, especially in that transition period, right? You can pick up so much more, because if you're still learning and you're spending 95% of your time with people who don't understand what you're doing, it is more challenging at that point. Every time you're like, ooh, what about math comes up, you say that to anybody else, well, put them in school is the answer, right? But when you're in that community and you say, oh, what about math? They talk you through it, and they help you realize, maybe why that came up for you, other possibilities. They're not judging you for that, but they're going to be able to give you answers that get you that next step towards where you're wanting to walk, right?
And they gave us ideas like that. I don't think I would have thought on my own to check with the local community college when my kids were 14 and 15 years old, when their thing is that you have to be 16 minimum to start here. Well, no, not really. They don't. But there's ways, and there's a path, and there's actually a liaison person there that will talk with you about the path. And, but it's just things that we just all along the way, I think. And I didn't realize when we first started, so in the year 2000, so we have been connected. We still have dear friends from this group, even though we're not a part of the active day-to-day group activities. I had no idea. I just assumed because we're in a suburb of Kansas City. So we're in a pretty major metropolitan area. I just assumed every bigger city in the country, if not other countries, would have homeschooling groups like this that were secular based, that had a wide variety of types of homeschooling families that were supportive of each other. And I found pretty quickly that once I did get online and find like unschooling, I think unschooling.com was one of my first finds online, found, chat groups and things online, and realized that we were really, really, really lucky to have that group here, because I mean, the things we did with that group were just
magical.
amazing.
I'm just, even to this day, I want to go back and recreate the memories. It's just, I long for it.
So,
Yeah,
and we had some really great families that had lots of different interests and skills, and we had a weekly co-op class or day of classes the kids could choose from. And I don't think even the classes that might seem schooly, like biology or things like that, weren't super duper schooly like. But they had classes like, I mean, like one of my favorites, because the parents often like took the classes along with the kids. We would join in. Was they took the Billy Joel song, "We Didn't Start the Fire," and they took all of those events in that song and put them on slips of paper. The kids drew them out of a hat or something, and had to research that event and figure out why it was important enough to be added to the song, and then come back and tell the group about, what they found out. And I thought it was so much fun. I don't know, my kids may not have, I don't know.
No, I enjoyed that one. That was a lot of fun.
But I mean, there were just lots of really unique things with parents who would jump in and offer, things
And
to
kids.
share, and kids
So
would lead.
Josh was doing electronics classes for folks, and Rylie was teaching dance to kids, and it's just, everyone could contribute and bring what they were good at. That's kind of.
I love that, because that's what we see in our unschooling families too, right? It's once you get rid of the compulsory nature, right? It's a choice, and once you're away from that, it's fun. Like, learning is fun. Learning just happens when you're doing the things, and everybody's got the things that they're interested in, right? So all those various things bubble up within our family, bubble up in the larger community, if the community is structured that way, in the sense that, like, you get to choose, like, I'm really excited about this, I'd be happy to show people, or somebody had the idea about the Billy Joel song. It's like, oh, we'd like to go dig into this, and the people who find it interesting flock to that, right? And it's just, it is such a different way of learning, like, because people can say, oh, well, we shouldn't have anything structured, we shouldn't be telling our kids anything. But no, we can be excited about things and sharing them too. And maybe they say, oh, that's cool, Mom, and off they go. Or maybe you end up in a 20-minute conversation diving deeper into it. Mm-hmm. Both ways are okay. But just the energy that comes with people being excited about the things that they're interested in. And it's exciting to share about the things that we're interested in, right? Yeah, that's so fun. Okay, so I thought now might be a good time to dive into unschooling from the kids' perspectives. I would love to know what stood out for each of you as one of the more valuable aspects of growing up unschooling. So why don't we start with Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for me, as well as a lot of other people who have grown up unschooling, for me, really, it is the freedom to try all sorts of things, to pursue what you're interested in, and the freedom to be a kid as you're growing up. You have the opportunity to go run around the backyard and look at bugs, or sit inside and read a book all day if that's what you're interested in, and really just have unlimited opportunities, and to know that you could pursue something that you find interesting, you get a chance to try it out. But if it's not really something that you're really interested in down the road, that's okay. You tried it out, and it's okay that if you want to stop doing that and try something else, you're not held into, no, this is what you've chosen to do, you've got to stick with it.
How are you going to learn if you can't change course, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And adding on to what Josh said as well is, like, our parents did, when he says we were given the opportunity to try what we were interested in, we were given every opportunity to try something we were interested in. So, like, I remember Josh was interested in cake baking at one point, I think. Oh,
yeah.
And he was like, my mom found, or my dad, I'm not sure who it was, found somebody in the area that was a professional baker. And we went to that person's house for I don't know how long we did it, but we would go and he would learn how to bake cakes and learn how to roll the fondant and stuff. And that was like a thing for a while. And then it shifted to something else, and there was this natural flow. But anytime we expressed an interest, our parents would come to us and say, hey, we found these things for you, or do you want to try it out? And we were given the option to say, well, actually, that was just a spur of the moment thought. I'm not really that into it. Or yeah, let's go for it. I really want to try it. But I think like the opportunities were endless there within our childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so valuable. Not only that, and that's part of the work. Like when parents are newer to unschooling, they're like, well, if I'm not helping them with their homework and taking them to school and back, what am I going to be doing? You're going to be helping them find all the fun ways that they can explore the things that they're interested in. And also doing that with no expectation that they're going to be excited about it and actually say yes. It's just, you've planted a seed there. There's this possibility in the world. And maybe it's 6 months or a year later and they go, oh, hey, you remember when you mentioned that? I think I'd like to try that out now. Like there's just so many possibilities when you approach it that way, right?
Absolutely.
I think of Josh's path around sports. I mean, like when he was a bitty, we were playing basketball and soccer, and that eventually came to he and I were doing taekwondo together for a while, and then the nice thing again with the kind of the free range of experiences we're ready to go after. Fencing was the next thing he was interested in. So we're working around fencing, but what he finally landed on as his true love wound up being parkour and free running. So.
Right. It's so fun to look back at the path, isn't it?
It is.
You can see the connection. So it's really hard to see in the moment why this interest is a thing maybe. But when you look back, you can start to see the threads of things and you start to see yourself kind of unfolding in them, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Okay, so Rylie, what about you?
I think, well, probably all three of us kids are going to have things that all tie into each other, just as our parents will and just as you will. But I think adding on a little bit to what Josh said, as far as like interests and what we pursued in different moments, I think we were taught to question things. We were taught to question society. We are taught to question ourselves as far as what we want to do every day. Just question why things work the way they do. And I think that also brings in like an intuitive aspect to our lives. And we all are very intuitive human beings now and know when something feels wrong, when something's no longer aligned with who we are and we need to move forward and past it. But I think that was something, there was this awareness that we developed as children that really honed in on this thing that some people spend their whole lives searching for. And we were lucky enough to kind of receive, I could say a conditioning in this way to believe in this intuitive way of life from when we were very young. So I think that that's a huge aspect that I've taken away from unschooling. And the path is question everything. Always be questioning if this situation is good for you, if this is right for you, if it makes you feel the right way. And then also like tuning into your intuition, and you'll be able to figure that out throughout your questioning.
My goodness, I love that. And I love that you mentioned the word awareness, because through that questioning, the self-awareness that develops, our understanding of ourselves that we can then bring in to the next time we're questioning something. So there's the self-awareness piece. Then there's kind of the context piece and understanding the world and the situation. And then it's like, how do these mesh together? And then the intuition piece, right? Which is your inner voice, understanding yourself and seeing how they mesh. So that helps you make the choices. And the biggest piece is, and it ties back to what Josh was saying about changing your interests, changing your path when it starts to, you know what, this isn't really feeling good anymore. I'm going to go back to my questions and see if something else might feel a little bit better, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the things, like when the kids were in like organized activities or organized classes and things, or lessons, because Rylie and Josh both did, Rylie did violin and Josh did fiddle lessons, right? Ellie did art lessons. If they were welcome to continue that as long as they wanted to, but they were never forced to stay in something if they really truly it wasn't working for them. It wasn't just like, oh, well, we've signed up for the season of soccer, so you have to stay in it the entire season, when Ellie's going, I don't want to chase that ball around. It's like, okay, well, all right.
I quit on the first day.
For you. So, we're not going to have to finish this out. And I don't, a lot of people would question, they would say, well, how are they going to learn to stick with something they don't want to do? The other thing was, how are they ever going to learn to get up for a job if you don't make them get up at a certain time? And every single one of them has had no issue whatsoever getting up for anything that they put value on. And if they had a reason to do it, they all could get up at the crack of dawn and go do whatever it is they need to go do. So
even though middays growing up didn't start before 10 in the morning.
Yeah, at the earliest, yeah. And it may be that, they may not enjoy getting up at 6 a.m. and going to do it, but they know that that's going to get them to their end goal of whatever. And they have to do that step to get to whatever. Like Ellie wants to become a lawyer. Well, you don't become a lawyer without going to college and then going to law school and doing the things the steps you have to go through to get that certification and degree. So if that means that, she has to take an early class, which she's been fortunate not to have to do too often.
I avoid it whenever possible, but I am a morning person, so.
Right. But I think just that allowing them the ability to say, this isn't working for me, I don't want to continue it, I want to try something different, and letting them do that was important.
Yeah. I wanted to pop back to what you said about, people saying, like, when you let them quit something, and saying, well, how are they ever going to learn how to stick it out for something? But no, how they're going to learn that is by finding the things they love so much that they're going to stick it out because they love it. This exploration is about finding the things that they love, right? So even if there's money involved, I found it really helpful and easy to frame it as what we learned with that money is that they really don't like this thing. And that was worth it. Like right there, we know this, right? And my friend Anna likes to talk about it as a sunk cost, right? That money is gone. And why do I want to use my money to make my child miserable by forcing them to finish the soccer season or finish the swimming lessons or whatever it is? Like, let's use this money to realize, oh, hey, look what we learned from this situation. Right. And what you want to find are those things that the kids love so much that you can't stop them. They are like heads down at it all the time. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a good friend, and she was actually one of the two ladies that started the homeschooling group Learn. Her like phrase or mantra, whatever, was like, find what it is that gets you out of bed in the morning.
Right.
Explore lots and lots of things, and then find what it is that gets you out of bed in the morning and makes you want to get out of bed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's the other lovely thing with unschooling. We find foundationally, this is what works for human beings. So, what gets you out of bed in the morning works no matter your age, right? Yeah, I love that. All right, so Ellie, let's move on to you. What stands out for you as one of the more valuable aspects of growing up unschooling?
Yeah, so I want to echo what both Josh and Rylie said. So with Josh, the ability or like the opportunity to really explore what we wanted to do, like I can think of a million different times that my parents threw resources at me when I expressed an interest. Like my mom said, I did art lessons for a long time. Well, I took one art class that was a very formal art class, and the instructor wanted you to exactly replicate the picture that she had. And I thought that was the stupidest thing I'd ever heard. I wasn't going to just paint a random picture. So I quit that art class, and she found me a new art instructor who I instantly clicked with and spent the next 8 years studying under her and massively developed my like knowledge and skills as an artist. But also like one time I'd always been very interested in cooking. Like that's always been something that's been a deep interest of mine. So my parents got me lessons at the Kansas City Culinary Arts Center that we would all go as like, I don't know, we were maybe 12, to the farmer's market every Saturday. And then we'd go back to the kitchen and the instructors would teach us what to make with the things that we had just found at the farmer's market. But really, I think the biggest thing is that my parents, one time my cousin is a pastry chef and she does these amazing sugar cookies that are like gorgeous pieces of artwork, right? And so I think, was I 13, 14? I think I might've been 14.
13, I think, yeah.
My parents flew me to Boston to go stay with my pastry chef cousin for a weekend, and she taught me how to make these sugar cookies. And I came home and made it a Midwest business and spent the next, I mean, still to this day, I sell those sugar cookies and have made, you know, enough money to fund travels that I wanted to go do and everything. And that was just from them sending me on a trip to Boston to learn what I wanted to learn. So I think that has been, you know, invaluable. But also what Rylie said, like, I think each of us have a really deep self-awareness that I know, at least for me, people have mentioned before throughout my life at different times. Like, wow, you are a very self-aware little child. But I think that really does come from just at every instance thinking like, is this right for me? Do I want to continue this? But I think another thing that I would add for something that has been really valuable to me or for me about unschooling is just the lack of limitations, right? Nobody's telling you, you can't do this because you're not at that grade level yet. Like you can't do this because you didn't do, you know, this one step that we have randomly deemed necessary as a prerequisite to this next adventure. So even just for me, like I was a bookworm as a kid. I never had my face out of a book. And so I was never told like, oh, you can't read these things because that's like, you know, an 8th grade reading level and you're at a 6th or anything like that. So that just really helped me as I moved on to, you know, start community college at 15 and go to KU with like sophomore, junior level credits at 18. And now I'm about to start law school and I'm 20 years old. So just not being limited has really, really served me in my life.
I love that. I love that because when moving to unschooling, one of the big things is age just kind of fades away, like alongside grades, right? You know, we're not tracking what grade we're in, and what bubbles up is the interest and how you want to pursue it. It doesn't have, like, you don't need those limits. And I found there were times where my kids wanted to do something and it would be out of the ordinary for a child of that age or for a child, you know, or whatever. And so I was just kind of connecting ahead of time with, you know, maybe someone who was running that class and just saying, hey, you know, my kid's interested in this. You know, is that okay? Can we make that work? And 9 times out of 10, especially when we're following our interests and we're diving into stuff we're interested in, the people who are teaching that stuff are interested in it too. So for them, it's like, hey, yeah, if they're interested, we'd love to have them. So I didn't really find a lot of issues or artificial limits on what my kids wanted to do, but you had to just have that mindset that, you know what, I'm going to ask. Because in the book, it may say ages 16 and up or something like that, but taking that extra step to talk ahead. Did you guys find that, Angie?
Yeah, each one of them actually has had that experience. Josh was has always been super interested in anything with wheels and an engine, especially motorcycles. And so when he was like, 13, our local community college would have, I think they still do, I'm not sure. They would have like these Saturdays where they would offer just unique, not normal, just like a 1 hour class. And you could sign up, the community could sign up for different classes. And so one of them was the history of motorcycles. So Darren and Josh signed up, they were like the 2 people in the class. And so they really connected with the instructor.
Bill Brown.
You still remember his name. Okay. And
I believe he was actually the dean of the automotive department at the time.
Yeah. Why don't you tell the story, Josh? Why don't you tell what happened?
Yeah. So we went to the class and, like Mom said, we were probably the only 2 people there. It was a very small group. So we got a lot of one-on-one time with Bill Brown, who was teaching the class. And, I think after the class was done, we stayed and just talked a little bit. And I think, Dad, you brought up that, hey, Josh is really interested in this stuff. What would maybe be some more resources that we could look into to learn more about this? And to our luck, he said, well, on Wednesday nights out at my big garage out here at my house, I've got a group of people that come together and they all work on their motorcycles together. And, he had a collection of probably 20 odd old motorcycles that he kept there. And he said, why don't you guys come by sometime and check it out? Just come on by and just, we'd be happy to have you come over and hang out. And it was a group of people who, some people kept their projects at his house. Some people would just come over and hang out with the group for the night, and learned a lot going to those. And actually eventually down the road, when I had a project of my own that we ran into some issues with, we took it out there, and from the collective group, we were able to say, oh yeah, you should look into this being the problem, and then I think that ended up fixing it. But yeah, that was an amazing resource that I really think kind of launched me to where I'm at now with the job that I'm doing. But yeah, no, absolutely reaching out to people and saying, hey, what would be something that is that we could do to get them more into this? I think that never hurts, and opens up some amazing doors too.
I think we're going to continue to go with the flow Josh has set for us here and go back to the limitations question, Anna. I think that there's another limitation that parents on an unschooling path can run into, or folks who are thinking about it, right? Which is, as a parent, I have limitations. I don't know how to teach somebody something like this. What if, so Josh, right, at that same time, we skipped a generation. My dad is all into, again, things with motor and wheels too, but I can swap out a radiator on a van to save me some money. I can do about anything YouTube teaches me how to do. It's just not my passion. And so it was great to be able to connect with Bill. But then about that same age, Josh is learning, he's wanting, like, Dad, I'd like to learn how to weld. And I'm thinking, all right, well, all the vo-tech classes at the high schools, they're not even starting it at 13 yet. Bill had made it pretty clear that he can't take a 13-year-old into community college quite yet. So I kept thinking, all right, now how do I do this? I don't know how to weld. I don't have the equipment in the garage. But fortunately, through that group one thing leads to another, through that group that we'd go over and hang out with on Wednesday nights for motorcycles, we got to meet Bernie. And Bernie is at the time, he was essentially taking care of all the maintenance and repairs for a number of apartment complexes by day, but by night, he was a mad scientist. He was welding together, a whole motorcycle frame around a diesel generator. So the diesel generator you get, and it was what was starting up the cycle. I don't think he could get more than about 55, maybe he could press 60 down the highway, but he made it work. So he was just fabricating all sorts of stuff in his garage at home. So my question to Bernie was, hey, what about Tuesday nights? What if I pop for pizza and Josh and I come out to your place and you teach him how to weld? And Angie and I found this book that was something like cycles, trikes and spinners for like the mad scientist, and essentially he picked a project out which would take a kid's bike, chop it up, and then turn it back into essentially like a big wheel on caster wheels. So you keep the front tire and caster wheels in the back. But that became like an 8-week project where we go week after week, because I didn't know how to weld. I didn't have the facilities, but Bernie did, and he liked Josh. and he was a bit of an educator and teacher at heart, and he liked the pizza.
Never hurts.
You just get creative. I think that's the thing you need to lean into as a parent is know we all have limitations. I don't know how to, kind of tell Rylie as she was going through her dance career how to sharpen up what she needed to do to get that next level. But you go out, you curate within your community, whether it's neighbors, friends, family members, folks, you're meeting through the local education system. Frankly, you uncover or turn over about every rock you can to find somebody out there probably knows it and probably is interested in sharing that information. And as long as you kind of coordinate it with them and kind of keep a careful eye on those relationships, you can put your kids in touch with folks who are more than happy to share some of that information and knowledge with them.
For me, that ended up being like the most fun aspect of unschooling. Like I could be super creative. I could look for all those little rocks. I would have so much fun searching around and then like excitedly running to one of my kids. Oh, I found this if you're interested in that. Or this is coming up next month. Are you interested in that? And again, no, it's fine. But that was like just that open and curious. And I wonder what's out there. And I wonder if they'd be interested in this. And finding just all those little bits because the world is big and the world is fun. Right. So to be creatively finding all these little pieces that just make our world bigger, even if their interest is something online, you can still find new and fascinating things online and make that world bigger as well. It doesn't literally need to be getting out of the house all of the time, just to make that for some families who are saying our interests aren't that way. You know what I mean?
Well, and like Ellie said, she spent lots and lots and lots of time with her nose in a book, reading a book, up in a tree, reading a book. And, and that's fine too. There's and it's okay that maybe you do, you just follow what works. Some days we were home all day and other days we were gone all day. And excuse me, it just kind of flows. And when you're not trying to fit it into the curriculum says we're supposed to be doing this today, then life just kind of happens. And one of the things I've used as an example when I've talked to people about unschooling is because I grew up in public school. I went to public school all the way through. And it was like our life was I compare it to my Saturdays when I was a kid growing up. It was there's times, there's things we have to do. We go to the dentist. There's certain things we have to do that, one of them has something that they have to go to. And there's one driver, me, and there's two other kids that are too young to be left home alone. So we all go to something, but it just that's how it was. I mean, it's every day was different, it seemed.
Yeah, you can still bring a book when you need to go out, right, Ellie?
Yeah, you definitely.
And a lot of times the thing that Josh was at had other of his homeschooling friends who had younger siblings who were Rylie and Ellie's age. And so, it all kind of, usually worked out. But I think Ellie got dragged around the most because, she was the youngest. So
It did. I do want to add one thing about just the turning over rocks. It wasn't even just the parents that had to do it, right? So I feel like we all kind of got a crash course on networking as children, which sounds kind of ridiculous. But now me as a college student who, just went through the law school application process and for the past 2 years has needed to find, mentors and people to help explain the LSATs and people to help explain how do I know what I want in a law school, all of these things. I naturally knew how to network and find the people that I needed because I'd been doing that my whole life.
I love that, Ellie, because I hadn't actually thought of it that way. But when I think about my kids quickly, absolutely, my photographer daughter is building that network and building it on kind of both coasts. And she's in the US now with that. And my son in filming, and he's building that network. And even my son who's, doing game development and stuff. But the network that he knows online, the people and connections, like where he knows to find the answer. Like, and the people that he bring when we're sharing stuff. Oh, did you see this? Did you see this? Did you, like, he pulls, it's just mind boggling to me how fast he finds, and he finds just the right thing, you know? So that really, I love that point, Ellie. That was really cool.
And also, I think teaching, we taught our kids how to learn. We didn't teach them what to learn, but we taught them how to learn. And so when they did decide they wanted to, I think it was Ellie wanted to do a formal math for a while. We weren't telling her she had to do formal math, but then it's like, okay, well, how do you want to learn it? Like, here's different ways, different programs to help you learn math. What seems to a good fit for you? And she was able to kind of find the one that she wanted to use. And so, yeah, so we had a lot of questions from people about, well, how will they learn what, fill in the blank. And it's like, well, we're teaching them how to learn so that when that's important and they need to know it, they'll know where to go and how to do that. It's, it's not that we're saying you can't do anything that looks like school, because they absolutely did sometimes choose to do that, but it was their choice to do that and not us saying, this is what you have to do.
I mean, and it's an entirely different experience when you're choosing. Mm-hmm. Right? And you're there to get what you want out of it, which may look different than maybe a teacher's expecting you to get out of it or whatever. But that self-awareness piece that we were talking about earlier, right? We bring that with us into all situations. We don't just all of a sudden choose something that's a formal learning environment and say, well, I have to leave the rest of me at the door now because now I'm here. No, you're bringing your whole self in there, and because you know how to learn the way that you like to learn, right? Because people learn differently. So you pull in those resources the way they work for you. I love that piece.